From seat 12C to the cockpit, kids' call sign silenced F-22 pilot's narration. Boarding proceeded exactly on schedule. Passengers filed through the forward cabin in an orderly line. Among them walked an 11-year-old boy wearing a navy blue hoodie and carrying an old leather satchel. He wasn't accompanied by parents. An airline escort guided him to his assigned seat. Seat 12C. Window side. His boarding pass identified him only as Ethan Brooks. He thanked the flight attendant politely, placed the satchel beneath the seat, buckled his seat belt, then opened an old notebook filled with hand-drawn aircraft diagrams. Not cartoons, not sketches made by a child. Detailed cockpit layouts, military formations, radio frequencies, navigation symbols. Some appeared decades old. Flight attendant Sarah noticed briefly. She smiled. "Do you like airplanes?" Ethan smiled back. "I remember them." Sarah laughed softly. "You mean you study them?" The boy looked out the window. "No, I remember." For just a moment, Sarah felt an unexpected chill. Then another passenger requested assistance with luggage. She walked away. Neither of them realized that would be the last ordinary conversation aboard Flight 728. Pilot dialogue. "Emily, boarding's nearly complete." "Captain Mercer, weather still looks beautiful." "Emily, smooth flight all the way." "Captain Mercer, let's keep it that way." Passenger reactions. Parents settled children. A retired Navy veteran across the aisle noticed Ethan studying aviation drawings. He leaned over, planning to become a pilot. The boy answered quietly, "I already know how." The veteran chuckled. "You've got confidence." Ethan simply smiled. Technical explanation. Before departure, airline crews verify passenger counts, cargo weight, fuel calculations, and aircraft systems. Even a seemingly routine boarding involves dozens of coordinated safety checks to ensure the aircraft is ready for flight. Suspense ending. Outside, the aircraft doors closed. Inside seat 12C, Ethan carefully turned to the last page of his notebook. Only one line was written there. A single call sign, covered by his hand. Scene 2 pushback. Narration. At 7:29 a.m., the tug gently pushed the Dreamliner away from the gate. Both engines came alive with their familiar low roar. Inside the cockpit, electronic checklists illuminated one after another. Hydraulic systems, electrical buses, flight controls, navigation. Everything showed green. Captain Mercer requested taxi clearance. The aircraft rolled toward runway 34. Morning sunlight reflected across the wings. Passengers relaxed. Coffee cups rattled gently as the Dreamliner moved. Nothing appeared unusual. Yet high above the Pacific, two F-22 Raptors conducting a routine military training mission altered their route. Not because of Flight 728. Not yet. But destiny had already begun pulling their paths together. Pilot dialogue. Captain Mercer, before taxi checklist complete. Emily, flight controls checked. Captain Mercer, brakes released. ATC dialogue. Ground, Pacific Air 728, taxi runway 34 via Alpha and Charlie. Captain Mercer, runway 34 via Alpha Charlie, Pacific Air 728. Passenger reactions. The little boy looked out the window without excitement. Instead, he watched the distant military runway visible beyond the airport fence, almost as though he expected someone to arrive. Technical explanation. Taxiing is a critical phase of flight, where pilots carefully navigate the aircraft from the gate to the runway while coordinating with ground controllers to avoid conflicts with other aircraft and vehicles. Suspense ending. As Flight 728 approached the runway, a military radar operator hundreds of miles away noticed an unidentified encrypted signal briefly appear, then disappear. No source. No explanation. Scene 3 takeoff. Narration. The runway stretched ahead like a ribbon disappearing into the morning sky. Captain Mercer advanced the thrust levers. The powerful engines surged. Passengers were gently pressed into their seats. The Dreamliner accelerated. 80 knots. V1. Rotate. The nose lifted gracefully. Within seconds, Flight 728 left the Earth. Below them, Seattle faded into the distance. Ahead, only blue sky. Pilot dialogue. Emily, positive rate. Captain Mercer, gear up. ATC dialogue. Tower, Pacific Air 728, contact departure. Captain Mercer, good day. Passenger reactions. Children cheered quietly. Some passengers closed their eyes. Others admired the coastline. Only Ethan continued staring toward the horizon. Technical explanation. During takeoff, pilots reach a committed speed called V1. After this point, the aircraft must continue flying even if an emergency occurs because there is insufficient runway remaining to stop safely. Suspense ending. Far beyond the clouds, two distant gray aircraft suddenly changed heading. Their noses pointed directly toward Flight 728. Scene 4, an unexpected intercept. Narration. 30 minutes later, Flight 728 climbed through 32,000 feet. The seatbelt sign switched off. Cabin service began. Coffee, breakfast, laughter returned. Then, Emily noticed an unusual symbol appear on the traffic display. Fast-moving, military speed, closing rapidly. Within moments, another appeared. Captain Mercer frowned. That's unusual. Pilot dialogue. Emily, traffic 12 o'clock. Captain Mercer, military. Emily, looks like fighters. ATC dialogue. Center, Pacific Air 728, maintain present heading. Captain Mercer, maintaining. Passenger reactions. Most passengers noticed nothing, but Ethan quietly closed his notebook, as though he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Technical explanation. Commercial aircraft occasionally encounter military aircraft during training exercises. Normally, controllers coordinate separation so neither crew is surprised. Suspense ending. The fighters continued closing, much faster than normal intercept speed. Captain Mercer had never seen anything like it. Scene 5, the visit to the cockpit. Narration. An hour into the flight, a flight attendant approached seat 12C. The captain has invited young aviation enthusiasts to visit the cockpit after the meal. Ethan nodded. No excitement. No smile. He simply stood, as though he'd done it hundreds of times before. When the cockpit door opened, Captain Mercer welcomed him warmly. But the moment Ethan looked at the instrument panel, his expression changed. His eyes immediately focused on one radio frequency, one that wasn't even active. He whispered, "You're monitoring the wrong emergency channel." The cockpit fell silent. Pilot dialogue. Captain Mercer, how do you know that? Ethan looked straight ahead. They're almost here. Scene 6, the fighters appear. Narration. The electronic warning echoed through the cockpit. Traffic, traffic. Captain Daniel Mercer instinctively scanned the navigation display, while First Officer Emily Chen looked through the windshield. For a brief second, she saw nothing but endless blue sky. Then, a flash of gray. An aircraft streaked past several thousand feet to their left before banking sharply. Another appeared moments later on the right. Two sleek fighters. Twin tails. Angular wings. There was no mistaking them. F-22 Raptors. Captain Mercer frowned. Military aircraft occasionally trained near civilian airways, but this was different. These fighters were deliberately positioning themselves alongside Flight 728. Not close enough to endanger the airliner. Close enough to be seen. Passengers began pointing excitedly through the windows. Several assumed they were watching an air show. Others reached for their phones. Inside the cockpit, however, no one was smiling. Captain Mercer picked up the radio. Seattle Center, Pacific Air 728. We have visual contact with two military aircraft. Can you confirm their intentions? Only static answered. Emily tried a second frequency. Again. Silence. The cockpit suddenly felt much smaller. Behind the pilots, Ethan stood perfectly still. His eyes never left the fighters, almost as though he recognized them. Pilot dialogue. Emily, no response from center. Captain Mercer, try guard frequency. Emily, switching. ATC dialogue. Emily, guard, Pacific Air 728, radio check. Nothing. Only static. Passenger reactions. Passengers on the left side applauded as one fighter rolled gently into formation. Children waved. The pilot did not wave back. Instead, the fighter remained perfectly steady. Watching. Waiting. Technical explanation. Military aircraft sometimes intercept civilian airplanes to identify them, assist with emergencies, or respond to security concerns. Standard intercept procedures are carefully coordinated and are intended to avoid unnecessary risk. Suspense ending. Then, one of the F-22s flashed its landing lights 3 times. Captain Mercer had never seen that signal before. But Ethan quietly whispered, "They've found us." Scene 7, the call sign. Narration. The cockpit remained silent. Captain Mercer looked over his shoulder. "Ethan, what do you mean?" The boy stepped closer to the center pedestal. He stared at the inactive military radio frequency. Then, without touching a single switch, he spoke one word. Sentinel 7. The effect was immediate. The previously silent guard frequency erupted with activity. A voice. Calm. Professional. Clearly military. Unknown station. Repeat last transmission. Emily's eyes widened. I didn't transmit anything. Captain Mercer checked every radio. No microphone had been keyed. Yet someone had heard Ethan. Across the sky, both fighters immediately changed formation. Instead of observing from a distance, they moved into a precise escort position. One ahead, one behind. Professional. Deliberate. As if responding to an old protocol. Pilot dialogue. Captain Mercer, who taught you that call sign? Ethan answered without hesitation. My father. Captain Mercer asked quietly. Was he Air Force? The boy looked out the windshield. I don't remember. ATC dialogue. Military voice. Pacific Air 728, maintain current altitude. Further instructions to follow. Emily looked confused. They're using a secure relay. Passenger reactions. The cabin remained unaware. Flight attendants continued serving drinks. Only a retired Air Force officer, seated in 14A, noticed the fighters' unusually disciplined formation. His expression slowly changed. Technical explanation. Military call signs identify aircraft or missions over the radio. Some are temporary, while others become historically associated with specific squadrons or operations. Suspense ending. Captain Mercer asked one final question. Who is Sentinel-7? Ethan's answer sent chills through the cockpit. My dad. Scene 8, The Notebook. Narration. Captain Mercer gently asked if he could see Ethan's notebook. The boy nodded. The captain carefully opened its worn leather cover. Instead of childish sketches, every page contained remarkably detailed aviation drawings, approach charts, radio frequencies, cockpit layouts, military formation diagrams, emergency procedures. Some pages looked decades old. Others appeared recently updated. Then Emily stopped turning pages. A photograph slid onto the cockpit floor. Captain Mercer picked it up. A smiling fighter pilot stood beside a young woman. In front of them, a small boy no older than 3. The pilot's flight suit displayed one embroidered patch. Sentinel-7. Captain Mercer looked at Ethan. Where did you get this? It belonged to my dad. Pilot dialogue. Emily, these procedures aren't public. Captain Mercer, no. They're not. Passenger reactions. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the aircraft crossed a thin cloud layer. Passengers remained relaxed, completely unaware that something extraordinary was unfolding just beyond the cockpit door. Technical explanation. Military flight manuals, radio procedures, and tactical diagrams are generally restricted and are not available through ordinary civilian aviation training. Suspense ending. Tucked into the notebook's back cover was a folded letter. Its envelope carried a government seal. Unopened. For 15 years. Scene 9, An Unexpected Warning. Narration. Suddenly, the weather radar painted an unusual area ahead. Not a thunderstorm. Not turbulence. A strange interference pattern. Emily adjusted the radar gain. The image remained. Then every navigation display flickered. Only once. But it was enough. Captain Mercer immediately disconnected the autopilot. The Dreamliner remained stable. Still, something had interrupted the aircraft's electronics. Outside, the fighters tightened formation. One pilot rocked his wings. The signal was unmistakable. Follow us. Pilot dialogue. Emily, navigation just glitched. Captain Mercer, cross-check everything. ATC dialogue. Military controller. Pacific Air 728, maintain visual with escort. Passenger reactions. Several passengers noticed the slight bank. Coffee rippled inside paper cups. Whispers spread through the cabin. Technical explanation. Modern airliners have multiple independent navigation systems. If one source becomes unreliable, pilots compare data from backup instruments before taking action. Suspense ending. Then, every cockpit display briefly went black. Just for 1 second. 1 second was enough. Scene 10, Manual flight. Narration. When the screens returned, Captain Mercer already had both hands firmly on the controls. Years of experience took over instantly. The Dreamliner remained stable. Emily began reading abnormal procedures. Electrical power. Navigation. Communications. Everything appeared normal again. Except The fighters refused to leave, almost as if they knew something Flight 728 did not. Behind them, Ethan quietly looked through the windshield. "They're late." Captain Mercer looked back. "Who's late?" "The others." Pilot dialogue. Emily, aircraft responding normally. Captain Mercer, "Let's keep flying manually." Passenger reactions. Cabin crew calmly reassured nervous travelers. Most accepted the explanation of minor turbulence. Only one elderly passenger continued watching the fighters. Technical explanation. Modern pilots regularly practice manual flying, so they can safely control the aircraft, even if automated systems become unavailable. Suspense ending. Radar suddenly detected another aircraft. Closing fast. No identification. No transponder. Scene 11, the unknown contact. Narration. The target appeared without warning. No airline code. No altitude information. Just a rapidly approaching radar return. Emily contacted air traffic control repeatedly. Nothing. The F-22s reacted immediately. One accelerated toward the unknown aircraft. The other remained beside Flight 728. Passengers now noticed the sudden movement. Fear slowly replaced curiosity. Pilot dialogue. Captain Mercer, "Emily, keep searching for center." Emily, still nothing. ATC dialogue. Silence. Only static. Passenger reactions. Phone stopped recording. People looked at each other. No one understood why military jets suddenly appeared to be protecting their airliner. Technical explanation. Aircraft normally broadcast identification through a transponder. If radar detects an aircraft without one, controllers rely on primary radar returns while military units investigate. Suspense ending. The unknown radar contact disappeared. Instantly. Without turning. Without descending. It simply vanished. Scene 12, the letter. Narration. Captain Mercer carefully unfolded the sealed letter from Ethan's notebook. Inside was a handwritten message. The ink had faded with age. "If my son ever reaches the cockpit, tell him I never stopped coming home." Neither pilot spoke. The signature had been partially damaged. Only 2 words remained readable. "Sentinel 7. Ethan quietly asked. "Did he finish the mission?" Captain Mercer couldn't answer. Suspense ending. Outside. One of the escorting F-22 pilots slowly raised a gloved hand and saluted the Dreamliner. Captain Mercer had never seen an intercept pilot salute a civilian aircraft before. Something far bigger than a routine escort was unfolding. Scene 13, a message from the sky. Narration. The radio crackled once more. A calm military voice finally broke through. "Pacific Air 728, maintain present course. You are safe." Captain Mercer replied immediately. "Can you explain this escort?" There was a pause, long enough to make everyone in the cockpit hold their breath. Then came the answer. Negative, information restricted. The transmission ended. The F-22s remained in formation. Ethan stared through the windshield, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke quietly. "They know who my father was." Captain Mercer looked ahead at the endless sky. Somewhere beyond those clouds, the truth about Sentinel 7 was waiting. But before they could uncover it, a master caution light illuminated across the Dreamliner's instrument panel. A new emergency had just begun. Scene 14, Master Caution. Narration. The amber master caution light illuminated across the Boeing 787's flight deck. A soft chime echoed through the cockpit. Captain Daniel Mercer instinctively reached for the caution reset, while First Officer Emily Chen scanned the engine indication and crew alerting system. One message appeared. Then another. Not engine failure. Not cabin pressure. A fault in one of the aircraft's electrical power distribution channels. The Dreamliner was designed with multiple independent electrical systems, meaning one failure would not immediately threaten the aircraft. Still, any unexpected electrical caution demanded immediate attention. Emily opened the quick reference handbook. The checklist was methodical, calm, and familiar. Outside, the two F-22s held position, matching the airliner's speed with remarkable precision. Inside the cabin, the passengers sensed something had changed. The aircraft remained smooth, but the confidence in the flight attendants' faces had become more serious. Captain Mercer made a calm announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've received a minor system indication. The aircraft remains fully controllable and we're working through the appropriate procedures. As a precaution, we'll be diverting to the nearest suitable airport. Our crew will keep you informed." The announcement was calm, professional, exactly as airline passengers are trained to hear during an abnormal situation. Yet in seat 12C, Ethan looked toward the cockpit door and quietly whispered, "This is where Dad said everything changed." Pilot dialogue. "Captain Mercer, electrical bus 2 fault. Backup systems are holding." Emily, checklist complete. Aircraft remains stable. Captain Mercer, let's coordinate a diversion. ATC dialogue. Captain Mercer, Center, Pacific Air 728 requesting immediate diversion due to electrical caution. ATC, Pacific Air 728, cleared direct Joint Civil Airfield Echo. Emergency services will be standing by. Passenger reactions. Some passengers exchanged worried looks. A mother held her daughter's hand. The retired Navy veteran closed his eyes and quietly said, "They've got this." Technical explanation. Modern airliners are built with extensive redundancy. A single electrical fault rarely means the aircraft is in immediate danger because backup generators and multiple power buses continue supplying critical systems. Suspense ending. The diversion was approved. But as the Dreamliner turned toward the alternate airport, the lead F-22 transmitted a single sentence. "Maintain visual, we'll stay with you." Scene 15, the descent. Narration. The Boeing 787 began a smooth descent. Clouds drifted past the cockpit windows. The escort fighters remained nearby until the airliner entered controlled airspace around the diversion airport. Then, almost ceremonially, both F-22s climbed away. Before disappearing into the clouds, the lead pilot gently rocked the aircraft's wings. Captain Mercer returned the gesture by briefly rocking the Dreamliner. No words were exchanged. None were needed. Ethan watched until the fighters disappeared. They kept their promise. Captain Mercer asked softly, "What promise?" "To bring us home." The technical explanation. A gentle wing rock is a well-known aviation signal that can be used as a visual acknowledgement between aircraft. Suspense ending. The runway appeared through the clouds. Now every decision mattered. Scene 16, safe landing. Narration. Landing gear extended. Flaps moved into position. The runway lights stretched ahead. Captain Mercer disconnected the autopilot. The Dreamliner descended smoothly through the final 1,000 feet. 500. Stable. 100. 50. 30. 20. The main landing gear touched the runway with a firm but controlled landing. Reverse thrust deployed. The aircraft slowed steadily. Moments later, Flight Pacific Air 728 rolled safely to a stop. Inside the cabin, there was silence. Then applause. Not because the landing was dramatic, because everyone realized they were safely on the ground. Passenger reactions. Many passengers thanked the cabin crew. Several wiped away tears. No one fully understood why fighter jets had escorted their flight. But every passenger knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. Technical explanation. In aviation, a diversion is a precautionary landing at an alternate airport when continuing to the planned destination is no longer the safest option. Suspense ending. Emergency vehicles surrounded the aircraft, but military vehicles arrived as well. Scene 17, the investigation. Narration. Hours later, the aircraft sat inside a maintenance hangar. Investigators downloaded the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder. Aircraft systems showed exactly what Captain Mercer had reported. A single electrical distribution fault. Nothing more. Nothing that explained the unusual military escort. Nothing that explained the mysterious radio response. Nothing that explained Ethan's knowledge. When investigators asked the Department of Defense for details about the intercept, the official reply was brief. Routine training activity. Captain Mercer knew that answer wasn't true. Suspense ending. Then an investigator quietly placed an old military file on the table. Stamped across the front were the words, DCLSSIFID. Scene 18, the truth about Sentinel-7. Narration. Inside the file was the story of Major Nathan Brooks, an Air Force test pilot. Call sign, Sentinel-7. 15 years earlier, Major Brooks had disappeared during a classified flight over the North Pacific. His aircraft was never recovered. He was officially listed as missing and later presumed dead. Captain Mercer slowly looked at Ethan. The photograph in the notebook matched perfectly. Nathan Brooks was Ethan's father. The notebook had been assembled from letters, flight notes, and personal journals preserved by Ethan's family. Ethan had spent years reading them, memorizing every page, every diagram, every story. The call sign that stunned the fighter pilots was not a secret Ethan had somehow discovered. It was part of his father's legacy, one remembered with deep respect by those who had served alongside him. Scene 19, the salute. Narration. Several days later, Captain Mercer received an invitation. A private ceremony at an Air Force base. Ethan stood quietly beside a memorial, engraved with the names of aviators who never returned home. 2 F-22s performed a ceremonial flyover. As they passed overhead, both aircraft climbed sharply into the sky. Captain Mercer recognized the same wing rock salute he'd seen during the flight. An Air Force colonel stepped beside Ethan. Your father saved many lives. He never stopped inspiring people. Ethan looked toward the sky. I know. Scene 20, epilogue. Narration. Months later, Flight Pacific Air 728 returned to its normal schedule. Passengers continued boarding. Pilots continued flying. Life moved forward. Captain Mercer often thought about Seat 12C. Not because of mystery. Not because of military aircraft. But because one quiet child had reminded everyone on board that courage, sacrifice, and memory can live on long after a mission ends. Ethan eventually joined a youth aviation program. His dream wasn't to become famous. It wasn't even to become a fighter pilot. He simply wanted to fly, because flying was the closest he felt to his father. Ending. The official investigation concluded that Flight 728 diverted because of a precautionary electrical system fault. The aircraft landed safely, and all passengers and crew walked away unharmed. The military escort remained officially described as a routine operation, though many questions were never publicly answered. Those who knew Major Nathan Brooks understood why his old call sign still carried meaning among the pilots who had flown with him. For Captain Mercer and First Officer Emily Chen, the flight became a reminder that professionalism, calm decision-making, and teamwork are what keep aviation safe, even when unexpected events unfold. For Ethan, the journey wasn't about uncovering a conspiracy. It was about discovering that his father's legacy had never been forgotten. Sometimes, the greatest stories in aviation are not about impossible miracles. They're about the people who inspire others to do the right thing, years after they're gone. As Flight 728 disappeared into the sunset on its next routine journey, Captain Mercer glanced once more at seat 12C. It was occupied by another ordinary passenger. But every time he saw that seat, he remembered the quiet boy who carried a notebook, a family legacy, and a single call sign that made the sky pause, if only for a moment. The end.